Train tracks are a dependable cornerstone in public transport, but they don't necessarily have to take on a standard straight line from point A to point B. Just like that viral photo render of an underwater railway, engineers continue to come up with designs that either maximizes the terrain of a certain place without causing much damage, or to simply make your travels more enjoyable. Watch this video until the very end to find out about the longest railroad in the world. Number 15. Ukraine's Love Railway. The Tunnel of Love is a small section of industrial track near the town of Klevin in Ukraine. It's widely popular for its entrance tunnel, a series of trees forming arches all covered in green leaves. Many years of trains passing the low-hanging branches have essentially created this natural verdant tunnel, only slightly bigger than the trains that pass it. This route currently only serves one train that delivers wood to a fiberboard factory thrice a day. And when the tracks are clear, the tunnel becomes a favorite spot for couples looking to take a nice stroll. Spring and summer are when the tunnel looks its lushest, but the warm orange hues of fall and the snowy trees of winter are equally impressive sights. Today it continues to be a popular destination not only for couples, but also for groups and solo adventurers. Both parties are also furiously protective of it as well. There was an outcry when several trees were cut down to help the passage of a train. No other trees have been touched since. Number 14. Gisborne Airport, New Zealand. Despite being known as a relatively remote and quiet transport hub at the outskirts of its town, this runway is truly one of a kind, because it's also bisected by a railway track that covers 160 hectares of its area. Engineers had to push through with this workaround since it had the most convenient route in the region. Thorough planning had to be done to ensure that planes and trains won't use the route at the same time, and since passengers' demands dropped in 2001, the railway is only catered to freight trains, which made it easier for the airport's timetables. Fortunately, there hasn't been any overlap in the past decade since the airport operates from 6:30 a.m. to 8:30 p.m. while most trains pass through overnight. Number 13. BRUSIO Spiral Viaduct. This infrastructure was a genius solution that engineers thought of to address the unique and varying elevation in Switzerland. This specific design is almost unheard of since train engines are usually only powerful enough to pull their loads on flat tracks, but this one raises them up by 20 meters in a very short distance. What's even more impressive is this amazing railway. It was built all the way back in 1908, where it was fully constructed on stone. Without it, the people residing in this area wouldn't have been able to transport much at all. Now it continues to serve as a transport network for the various towns that it connects. Number 12. RAMESWARAM Train Bridge. The Pambin Train Bridge is the first sea bridge that was built in India. This bridge was completed in 1988 and held the track 41 feet above sea level. It provided local transportation from the Pambin Indian island with the town of Mandapan. The railway was so narrow that all you'd see is water when you look out the windows. Sadly, after being in operation for more than 100 years, cracks were discovered on the infrastructure. This caused it to close down, and it remains closed even until the present day. Fortunately, there are plans underway to get a more modernized bridge in here. Number 11. The White Pass. This railroad links the port of Skagway and the capital of Yukon, Whitehorse. It was originally built at the start of the 20th century to grant access for workers to the gold fields, and it also became an essential route for the region for the next 82 years. After being closed for several years due to failing passengers, it was then reopened as a heritage railway and eventually became a popular tourist attraction for its beautiful countryside scenery. At present, only the first 68 miles of it remains operational due to the lack of maintenance on the whole track. Number 10. Japan's monorail track switching. Monorail networks are common at theme parks, but countries like Japan have adapted that technology into their urban design. This one, located in Tokyo, was the country's first monorail, and it transports hundreds of thousands of people each day thanks to Hitachi's novel approach. Switches are considered vital to assigning trains to their respective routes. In Tokyo, some of their monorails can switch up to 5 different options. And although this involves moving an entire section of the track itself, the ride remains smooth for the passengers inside the trains, which is pretty efficient in all honesty. Number 9. Devil's Nose Railways. The impressively designed railway in Ecuador took 25 years of planning and almost 10 years to actually build. It was meant to connect Quito, the country's capital, with the coastal city of Guayaquil. It was named as such because there was a huge blockage in the form of a vertical wall of rocks that engineers had to work around. They decided to carve out tight, zigzagging tracks to carefully allow the train to ascend the terrain. Passengers were formerly allowed to sit on top of its roof to enjoy the breathtaking views, but after a devastating storm in 1997, safety regulations had to be put in place, and only 8 miles of the route remained operational. Number 8. The Death Railway. The surroundings of this railway may look luscious and even majestic in the present, but it has a tragic story behind it. It got its ominous name because of the extreme human sacrifice that was made when it was being constructed. The Death Railway, also known as the Burma Railway, was built by the laborers and prisoners of the empires of Japan during World War II. They were kept in such awful conditions that more than 100,000 of them died, particularly in regions where it was difficult to build. Around 111 Japanese officials that oversaw the project were found guilty, and about 32 of them were sentenced with the death penalty. Unfortunately, families of the victims have never received any reparations. Number 7. Glacier Express, Switzerland. This rail route played an integral part in connecting commercial hubs of Switzerland from the east to the west back in the 30s. It navigates through 291 bridges and 91 tunnels, and takes a total of 8 hours to travel from end to end. The Glacier Express is also known as the slowest express route in the world, since they ensured that its gradient won't rise above 3.5%. There's only 1 train traveling from each direction in the winter, and 3 each in the summer, so make sure to keep track of the Swiss time when you ride this train. Number 6. MAEKLONG Railway Market. MAEKLONG Railway in Thailand is famous for running right through a local market. It's located in Samut Sangam Province, about an hour's cab ride from Bangkok. It's considered to be one of the most amazing attractions in the country. At first glance, this market seems to be no different from the others in the city. The major differences are the tracks that run right through the middle of the stalls, and really it's business as usual most of the day, until a warning bell plays over the PA system, indicating that a train is coming. This gives the tenants a few minutes to clear the tracks of their wares, and like a choreographed dance, they all pull back specially designed awnings that fold their kiosks and tables back just enough to allow the train to pass. Once the train passes, umbrellas are reopened and their wares are again put out in the open, and life goes on until the next train comes along. Number 5. Pilatus Railway, Switzerland. Initially built in 1889 to bring guests from Lucerne around the mountain, the Pilatus Cogwheel Railway does a max of 48% gradient. It also does an average of 35% around the mountain. Just know that these are some pretty steep figures, to say the least. Its success is due in part to the locker rack system, which has gear teeth cut in the sides rather than on top of the rail. This system allows effective use on steep gradients compared to more traditional systems, whose teeth could break or jump off the track. The photos might look frightening, but there have been 0 incidents since this machine's inception, making Pilatus Railway the steepest yet safest railway in the world. Number 4. South Devon Railway. One of the primary drivers of the UK's Industrial Revolution in the 1800s was their railway system. This gave the island nation an unprecedented boost to commerce and tourism. This was because major cities, business districts, and far-flung towns were all within reach. However, this was more than 100 years ago, and nature isn't always kind to relics of the past. Take South Devon Railway, for instance, which once was half a mile inland. Due to coastal erosion, it now chugs along the coast, where bad weather can make the trip harrowing. Waves lash against the rocky coast and spray water across the track. The situation has become a bit of a problem for some passengers, as it's the only railway line that passes through Cornwall, extending into the southwest. A recent storm destroyed parts of the seawall and track, shutting down rail travel to the region for several months. Fortunately, this brought some media attention to the aging train system. Rehabilitation efforts are being proposed for the track, and 2 close stations are being eyed to help decongest traffic and help boost Devon's economy. We're pretty hopeful that this veteran carriage gets the makeover it deserves. Number 3. Shonan Monorail. You ever ridden a train that's suspended below its tracks? Shonan Monorail in Japan is the first transport system of its kind that opened in 1970. It transports commuters from 8 different stations and can travel up to 45 miles per hour. This monorail has significantly alleviated pressure from other traditional railways, as it's recorded departures every 7 minutes. Mitsubishi, its brainchild company, became a world leader in such designs and hoped that other countries would adopt it so they can reap its benefits as well. Number 2. Kuranda Scenic Railway. The Kuranda Scenic Railway is a journey that's both awe-inspiring and breathtaking. The 2-hour train ride is filled with scenic sights of tropical Queensland, which includes majestic mountain ranges, lush ravines, and cascading waterfalls. These 130-year-old tracks begin at the coastal plains of Cairn. From there, it's a 1 hour and 55-minute climb to Kuranda village, including a 10-minute stop at Barren Falls Outpost for a spectacular view of Barren Falls. All in all, it's a 328-meter climb up the rainforest through dozens of tunnels, bridges, and spectacular waterfalls. Kuranda village is home to some world-class wildlife attractions featuring your favorite Aussie critters. Though if shopping is more your jam, the Kuranda Heritage Market offers a selection of local art, crafts, and locally sourced produce to take home. Being one with the rainforest as you undertake an unforgettable journey is what makes Kuranda Scenic Railway a must-try experience. Number 1. Trans-Siberian Railway. The Trans-Siberian Railway is the main railroad artery of the country that connects the European part of Russia with Siberia and the countries in the Far East. Its route from Moscow to Vladivostok is the longest one in the world, clocking in at 9,288.29 kilometers. The railway was a pet project of Tsar Alexander and his cohorts. During this time, public sentiment did not favor the train, as many seemed to find it far too extravagant and opulent during a time when the country was in high debt. Still, it would be quite the show of power to the European neighbors if he could join both. The original train route had marble fixtures, a grand piano in the music area, a fully stocked library, and a gym. There was also caviar and sturgeon in the first-class dining room. The downsides here is that it ran at a plodding 40 kilometers per hour, which means it took nearly 4 weeks for the journey to reach its end. Today, the same route can be completed in 7 days, in more practical seating and sleeping configurations. Without a doubt, this is one of Russia's most magnificent accomplishments. Thank you all for watching, everybody. See you later.